And joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen Moore in Boston. Welcome, Galen.
Hi, Christine.
Good to see you. All right, so as you saw in the chart, why do you think we see a rise in multi-sig addresses getting their hands onto Bitcoin since 2018, but flatten out in 2019?
Hard to say exactly. As always, there's a caveat with crypto data. You can always take an interesting look at what's happening on the network, but sometimes you don't know exactly how to interpret it. In this case, we see the number of Bitcoin in multi-sig addresses increasing dramatically in 2018 and then leveling off mid-2019. One possible interpretation, the rise of crypto custodians. Coinbase Custody launched in 2018. Anchorage was not far behind in early 2019. But I think the broader takeaway from this, Christine, is more relevant to the upcoming Taproot upgrade, which has a multi-sig component that will make will basically make this chart will not be possible once Taproot is complete. Multi-sig, you will not be able to tell the difference between a multi-sig address and a standard address, and multi-sigs will be easier to use. So I think if you look at this chart, there's some sort of maybe optimism that you might see a increased use of multi-sigs on Bitcoin. But at the same time, you might say, well, demand has been pretty anemic for this type of address. So, is this really going to be a part of Taproot that will really provide benefits for the network is a fair question to ask.
What do you mean this chart won't exist and that? Are you just saying everyone will start using multi-sig, or because of Taproot, you won't be able to tell the difference anymore? Sure.
Yeah, it's really being able to tell the difference, Christine. I mean, Bitcoin, is cash-like in many ways, but does not have the privacy features of cash. A lot of features of transactions are visible to anybody on the network. So if you're using a multi-sig right now, we're able to identify that, that address is using that's a multi-sig address that is being used in that transaction. With Taproot, all transactions will look the same, whether they're using multiple signatures or a single signature. So that's a privacy feature in a way for those who may want to use a multi-signature setup where you need at least 2-3 people or entities to sign onto a transaction. But they don't want that they don't want to broadcast to the network that they have that need, right? So you might see, for example, institutional players valuing that kind of privacy. Or other actors on the network might want that kind of privacy as well.
Do you think that there will be more people using multi-sig? Will that become more popularized? And I say that because two-factor authentication is inconvenient enough. So do you see this migration into this really much more difficult way of custodying your coin?
Sure. I mean, do you really want to go and have to get somebody else to sign on when you want to trade or something? I think for the vast majority of Bitcoin users, that's probably a bridge too far. But there certainly is a segment that would value that, right? If I was, custodying other people's funds, for example, I might want to have some governance in place that would require multiple signatures before the funds could be moved. That would be a good practice. So I do think as you see, institutional adoption, technology like this is likely to become more in demand. Another aspect, by the way, is that a multi-sig is essentially a kind of smart contract. So by adding and improving the functionality in multi-sigs, Bitcoin is taking a step toward richer functionality. It's certainly not, becoming Ethereum in any way, but there is a kind of a lean in that direction, at least, that might, create some new innovative uses of the Bitcoin network. I
can't let you mention institutionals using multi-sig without mentioning Quadriga CX, the most infamous case, whose founder, Canadian Gerald Cotton, died mysteriously in India, and he was the sole possessor of the cryptographic keys to the exchange's wallet. Now creditors have been waiting 4 years to get over $100 million back. So do you think there are a lot of institutions or large Bitcoin holders that don't use multi-sig?
Well, sir, I mean, my guess would be that most sophisticated participants, at that level, especially if there's a fiduciary responsibility, are going to be using a custody provider, and that those custody providers will have systems like multi-sigs in place. I mean, for example, you can have a sort of a 2 out of 3 signatures requirement, or 3 out of 6 or something. In which case, like, three different entities have the key, and at least two of them have to be present in order for the transaction to take place. That kind of scenario would have prevented, say, one of the parties gets hit by a bus or goes to India and disappears, and you can't recover the funds. So this is the kind of, I think, operational security that's part of the custody business, and that I think a growing number of well-known custodians are building up.
Well, it's a frightening prospect that an institution or exchange would be holding hundreds of millions of dollars with one guy with the private
I
keys.
think fortunately we're kind of moving past that stage of crypto infrastructure maturity.
The industry is growing. Excellent.